Hello and welcome to another training video in Microsoft Configuration Manager series. In this video, we will cover how to build and automate the Windows deployments across devices using task sequences, boot media, and more. My name is Navneet Kumar and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. In case you are new to this channel, please subscribe it for future updates. Well, the operating system deployment, also referred as OSD in the Microsoft Configuration Manager, allows you to deploy the Windows operating systems at scale. Whether you are imaging the new machines or upgrading the existing ones, you can automate the entire process using the task sequences. This makes the deployments efficient and standardized. The SCCM supports four main deployment types. Number one is bare metal installation for the new devices. Number two is refresh scenarios where the operating system is reinstalled. Number three is replacement with the user data migration. And number four is in place upgrades that preserve the user data and the applications. The key operating system deployment components include the boot images to start the devices, operating system images to deploy the operating system, task sequences that define each steps, driver packages for the hardware support, and the distribution points that deliver the content. The operating system deployment process follows the five key steps. Import and configure your boot and operating system images, number one. Number two, build a task sequence. Number three, include the drivers or the applications. Number four, distribute the content to the distribution points or collections. And finally, deploy it to the target devices or user collections. Here in the demonstration, we will see all these five steps over here. First, we will see how to create the driver packages. Then we will see adding the boot images to boot the client devices. Next, we will see how we import the operating system images. Then we will create the task sequences to define the steps that we want to perform. And finally, we will deploy the task sequences. In this way, with the help of these task sequences, we can automate the deployment of the operating system. Not only the deployment of the operating system, but the applications update deployment also can be performed. That's why this is also referred as zero touch installation, where no human intervention is required to deploy the operating system, related applications, and the updates. Well, without any further ado, let's get started. To perform the operating system deployment to the bare metal devices using SCCM, we need to prepare the configuration manager servers. For an instance, the distribution point with the PXE configuration. PXE stands for pre-execution environment that allows the devices without operating system to boot. For that, I'm going to the administration workspace on the left in SCCM console. In server and site system roles, I select the server which has the distribution point role on it. I have opened the properties of the distribution point server, and there is PXE. I will enable the PXE support for the clients. There is a checkbox. I will check this and will enable this setting on the distribution point. Apart from that, there are certain settings that we can configure here. For example, allow this distribution point to respond to the incoming PXE requests, or enable the unknown computer support where the device information is not known. So we can do the deployment to the bare metal devices. In our demonstration, we will be using the MAC address to add the device to the particular collection where we will do the deployment of the task sequences to deploy the OS. Well, here we can define the password which is required to boot from the PXE. So we can define it and confirm. There we have the settings to user device affinity that do not use the user device affinity or use the device affinity. Then the network interface settings we have. So the setting I have selected here in our case is allow the user device affinity with the manual approval, and the network interface is to respond to the PXE requests on all network interfaces, and we can define specific interfaces to whom this PXE should respond. Here now under the monitoring, I will see the distribution status. I will go to the distribution point configuration status where the PXE is now enabled. You will see this column PXE is set to yes on this distribution point server. In case if it is not coming as yes even after doing the configuration, then you can refresh this. So you have the refresh button on the top, or you can right click and refresh on this distribution point. Well, the PXE is turned on the distribution point server. Now the next thing we're going to perform is we're going to the site. This is a datum site, and on the site we will configure the site components. Here in the software distribution, we can define the settings for the network access account to distribute the software. I will click on the network access account. We'll specify the account here that I'll use for this deployment. We'll click on this sun icon over here to create a new account, and I can use the existing account that is there in this Active Directory domain for this deployment. So I can click on browse, or I can type that directly here if I know the account. Here I will search for the account which is network access. We'll select this account from the domain. We'll click OK, and we'll provide the password and confirm the password. After this, I will click on verify, and from here I can provide the network share and can test the connection that whether this has or this account has the access to the required network share or not. Verified, I can click OK and close this window. Next, I will manage the drivers. For that, I'm going to software library where we have the option operating system. And if I expand that, here are several options. The first option is the drivers, where we can add the drivers that are required to support the different hardwares. So we can select the import driver option from here, or we can manage the folders to categorize these drivers. Now I can import these drivers from the network share by defining the UNC path. Click next. Here we have options to hide the drivers that are not in a storage or network class for boot images, or hide drivers that are not digitally signed. Uncheck the option for showing the drivers which are not even digitally signed, and for this lab demonstration purpose I'm using some of the drivers that are not digitally signed, but it is not advised to use unsigned drivers. That is why the default option was to hide the drivers that are not digitally signed. Click next. Here you can create the driver package, provide a friendly name, comment the driver manufacturer, driver model, and the path for the drivers. Click OK. Once the driver package is created, click next. This is to select the drivers to include in the boot image. I have this 64-bit image. Next. Click close. Here is our driver package, Hyper-V drivers. You can right click and distribute the content. Distribute this content to the distribution point. Click add distribution point. Select your distribution point from here. Click OK. Next, and close. You can refresh and see the status of the distribution of the content to the DP. You'll notice that the status of distribution is success. Next, we will add the boot images. So this is the option to add the boot images here. We have 64-bit or 32-bit. I'm going to the properties of the 64-bit boot image. Can define here the required customization. Enable the command support. Under the optional components, I can add the required components from here. I will add the WinPE PowerShell. Under the drivers, I can add the drivers over here. Again, the drivers are already hidden, which are not digitally signed. So I will uncheck this box and will list the drivers. This is Microsoft Hyper-V Network Adapter driver. I will select it and add. Click OK to add this to the boot image. Under the general, I can select the name, version, or can define the comment. This is the distribution settings where the distribution priority can be specified. Click apply and close this window. Yes, continue. Next. Next. Click close. If I right click and click distribute content, then I may not find the distribution point over here because the content may already be distributed. Now it is time to import the operating system images. Here we browse the source of the operating system image. Next. Language. Provide it a friendly name. Next. This is the data source information. Finally, close this window. Now that we have the operating system image available. We will distribute the content of this image. We'll distribute it to the distribution point we have available, and then cfg.atom.com. Now it is time to onboard the bare metal devices to the configuration manager. For that, I will import the computer information. Here we have the option to use a file or a single device. I will go with the single device right now. We'll provide the computer a name and then the MAC address. This media access control is a 12-digit hexadecimal number, which is unique for the network interface card. I will select that. The collection I want to add this device to is Datum Windows 10 images. In this collection, you see member count is 0. Right now there is no member in this. Next. Next. Close. So this is our bare metal device we will be using for the operating system deployment. Now it is time to update the device collections. I will go to the all systems. Here you see the 17 devices are there. I will update the membership. I will refresh it. Now you see the devices are 18. One device is added. Now it is time to update the Datum Windows 10 image device collection, where there is no member right now. I will right click and update the membership, and one device has been onboarded to this device collection. Now it is time to create the task sequences to define all the deployment steps in a task sequence. For that, I will create a task sequence. These are the options. You want to create a task sequence to install an existing image package, or you want to build and capture a reference operating system image, you want to perform an upgrade, or you want to deploy the autopilot. Task sequence name, any description you want to provide. The boot image, we already have that 64-bit boot image available, where we have added the required drivers, and we will select that. After selecting your boot image, go with next. This is for the operating system image. You can browse and choose the operating system image that was prepared. Click OK. I want to do the partitioning and formatting on the target device. I will uncheck the configured task sequence to use with BitLocker, and in case you want to supply the product key, you can go with that. That's optional. You can enable the account, the admin password, local admin password for those devices. Next, join to a domain. Atom.com. Optionally, you can define the domain OU. The device will join to the domain and will land into the London client's OU by default. So immediately all the group policies and the permissions will be applied to the device. Here I can specify the account. This account should have the domain join permissions. It's an Active Directory domain account. So this is a delegated admin account basically. You can verify. Test connection. Connection was successful. Next. Install the Configuration Manager client on the target device. You can define the installation options like the fallback status point and the other options like the disable the site options or the required parameters you can specify for the SCCM agent. State migration, if you want to configure, you want to include the updates, you can configure that. Install the application, you can add the applications to this task sequence. As I mentioned earlier that you can perform the zero touch installation using SCCM. So the operating system required applications, updates, everything will be deployed without any manual intervention. In this task sequence, we can edit and define any steps. The username I have specified for the device is Adatum IT Services. The organization name, so this is for licensing purpose, I have specified. This is how we can edit the task sequences to define any step. Well, the final task is to deploy this task sequence to the required device collection. So I will right click and click on deploy and will choose the device collection where I edit the bare metal device. So this is the device collection and this is the Adatum Windows 10 image which has one client in it. Next. So the purpose is available. Only media and PX is the setting I have selected. I can specify the off office hours schedule to do the deployment, user experience, alerts, distribution point settings, and finally the summary. This is how we can initiate the deployment of the task sequence.